when you first moved into the office, proudly, one of the first things you did was have a replica of the altar of your little Masonic lodge that you've often talked about, and it's just a few feet to our left here. And on that altar, took the obligation that so many Master Masons take. We do a lot of work memorizing these things, and then sometimes we go out in the world and we don't live up to it a little bit. And you touched on this a little bit at the Conference of Grand Masters, and some of the things that you see that are, I don't know if frustrating is the right word or how you want to phrase it, but how we could maybe do a better job honoring those obligations, especially to one another. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like I said, I don't know if frustration is the right word or.
No, I don't. I try not to get frustrated about it because it is, particularly in our world today, it is very much human nature for us to get caught up in the moment. For the last, really, I noticed this as I was, and I don't know why I noticed it, but I noticed it when I was going through high school. It seemed like, now that was the 70s, and it seemed like that things were changing at a ever faster rate, and society was going through changes at a faster speed, and that has accelerated with the internet, with social media, with the advance in communication. I mean, I can easily remember the day when I was, because I was an administrator at the university at Virginia Tech, I was awarded a bag phone, we called it.
Oh, I remember those.
It was a car phone, but it looked like a football. It was about the size of a football. And now I've got this watch that I can actually make a phone call on. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Dick Tracy. And then people go, who's Dick Tracy? But I do. I feel like Dick Tracy. We don't have those little things where they could like transport themselves in those little flying buckets that Dick Tracy had. But we have, information flies at us so fast, people don't take time to let the information register. And in Freemasonry, we've always talked about waiting a time with patience at critical junctures in our path. And if we don't do that during our daily walk, then we're going to lose the benefit of understanding and of self-analysis and of personal decision making. We get too swept up. It's just like when a flood goes through the town, it just takes everything fast. You can't just stop it at that point. It just floods right on through, and then afterwards it's a mess. Well, that's what happens in our daily lives sometimes. And so I am convinced that we're an organization where we started on a common theme. I used a little level. I very seldom take anything with me to a meeting, but at the Conference of Grand Masters, as you know, I had a little, it's about not quite 2 inch, about 1.5 inch level.
Little bubble level.
Little bubble level, and it's got a magnet on the back. So you could actually like put it on your refrigerator or something. But I used that to remind those Grand Masters there that the level in many ways is the most important tool of leadership, because you have to, no matter what your office is, you have to treat one another in a level manner. And the obligations we took are just, to me, the essence of who we are. We promised each other, and we sealed it with a kiss of our own choosing on our choice of the volume of sacred law. Most of us, that was the Holy Bible. And that's a big deal to me, because the only question I asked when I sat in that lodge room with the investigating committee, they asked me a bunch of questions, but they knew me, and it was kind of pro forma stuff. And they said, well, what questions do you have? And I said, what is that book? And they said, that's the Holy Bible. And I said, and they explained that there's a volume of sacred law, and in this case, that they were using the Holy Bible. And I said, and that was they referred to it as the altar. And they said, everything that we do, we try to draw from the teachings of that book, and we try to keep it in the center so that we do not stray far from it. And I thought that was such a cool answer, and I said, well, I'm in then. So to me, it all goes back to that. When I run into folks that are not really remembering their obligations, I literally picture that little altar. And over to our left here is that altar that you talked about. The Bible is a gift to the Grand Lodge of Virginia. The altar cloth and the kneeling pad were handmade by my mother. It is a 1/3 replica of the altar in my lodge. It's got the same trim on it as the altar in the executive chamber to remind me also of the executive chamber. So I just want us to remember where we came from. And that's why I say, for me, that's why I keep telling myself I'm the little country boy, because that keeps me grounded and keeps me simple as I approach some pretty complex problems sometimes.
Specifically, you and I have had discussion about how we as Freemasons, and this is not as Grand Commander to a guy who works at the House of the Temple, this is as Master Masons, as Scottish Rite Masons, we've had these conversations of we have to conduct ourselves at all times as Masons, and that includes in our social media lives where, as you said, it's really easy to get swept up. It's really easy in the heat of the moment, someone is disagreeing with my particular opinion, and now I'm going hard at this and I've certainly been guilty of it sometimes. And you've been telling a lot of us recently that we need to be more cautious in that. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, the unfortunate reality is that we are seeing things screamed on social media that we would not have allowed our members 30 years ago to stand and say on a street corner. We are talking in tones, we are communicating in tones on Facebook posts and in emails with all capital letters and a lot of explanations and little snide remarks. We are using that tone there, and we would never have allowed it 20 years ago on the sidelines in the lodge. We would never have allowed somebody to do that sitting in a restaurant before or after a lodge meeting. When I say never allowed, we would have immediately said, hey, now Maynard, wait a minute. We would have whispered good counsel. And nobody whispers good counsel on social media. Nobody really goes to the sender and the next time they see them and say, hey, Maynard, why you didn't have to put all caps on that. You didn't have to pop off as quickly on that. I said this at the closing of the Conference of Grand Masters. In my, I set aside time for morning and evening devotions. And in my morning devotions to start the day, one of my daily prayers is, give me the strength to act as I should act, to not act if I should not act, to react if I should, to not react if I should, what I should say and what I should not say, how I should appear and how I should not appear. Because a big part of human communication is what you don't say. And when we don't stand up and say, this is wrong. We don't have to scream it. We've already promised how to do it. We promised we would go and whisper good counsel in someone's ear. Whispering good counsel in someone's ear is not capitalizing an email or posting anything on Facebook. You can't whisper when your audience is millions of people. That's not a whisper by anybody's definition. So if we as Masonic leaders and just as Master Masons, if we do not say something, then we are saying something. If we allow people to rant and rave and scream and post inappropriate pictures on social media and to make cutting remarks about people who are brethren of ours in a public place like social media, if we watch that happen, we have broken our own vows and we are pushing for the demise of our fraternity. Because if we can't keep our word, it doesn't matter.
It's such an easy thing for each of us to slip into, and so when you see that, I don't think you're advocating for people to respond in social media. It's
no.
Pick up the phone or go visit with a brother and say, "Hey, Bill, I saw you going off on Charlie over there on social media." That's not how brothers should speak to each other. And not respond with a third social media post and throw your rock into the pile.
No, I mean, I really try with my social media post. If you look, most of them, it simply says, "I'm here with the good brothers of ABC Valley in this place, having a good time." That's probably 2/3 of my post. The other posts are happy birthday, happy anniversary, or congratulations. If my grandmother used to drill into me, if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. And so I try not to get into debates on social media. I try not to correct anybody on social media. And it's a big temptation because the opportunity is out there for people to respond without information. So people are making statements that I know are factually incorrect, but I have to stop myself. And that's why I ask that prayer every morning. I have to stop myself because it is not the forum to debate. Social media it is supposed to be social. If you even look at the beginning of that, the idea was to say, "Hey, I'm traveling here," or "Look, I'm having a reunion with my family or friends," or "Look, I see this beautiful sunset," and you're sort of sharing your experiences with the world. Unfortunately, it has become a forum for some people who think that it is a stage for debate. And that's not the intent, and it also is simply not the right tool, time, or place for a debate.
Because it's so easy to mentally dehumanize the other person because they're not there in front of you. You're not breathing the air they're breathing. You're not feeling their emotion. You're not sure if they're coming at you hard or if they're sad or from what. So you can't empathize with the other person, and we've lost that empathy. And I think what you're saying is we really need to remind ourselves that there's a person at the other end of that, and attach ourselves to that empathy.
Even at a minimum, if I needed to communicate with someone, I would, if they posted on Facebook, I would send them a nice email. Just a one-to-one kind of thing. But my preference would be, if I was giving advice on the topic, would be no, do it either face-to-face or on the phone, because as humans, we've got 5 senses. And whether we pay attention to it or not, we use all of those senses at one time or another in our human communication. And we need to use more of our senses in particularly challenging communication situations. So we should hear the voice or we should see the person. That's the best, because then you can see the facial expression. You can tell whether the person is really means green or if he kind of meant, olive. So it is important for us, because in Freemasonry, and that's why I push in Freemasonry the one-on-one experience and the opportunity for feedback and interaction. I mean, that's what I love, like with this opportunity, to be able to share some thoughts. And, I hope out of this, if people have a question, they'll just email me and say, hey, I didn't know this, or what do you think about that? Or that's all fine with me. I spend a lot of my day just communicating back and forth in a one-on-one situation. But we have to give one another the benefit of the doubt. And you can't give somebody a benefit of the doubt when you basically are shouting to the world. You're not talking to a human. Shouting to the world is one thing, and that's what you do with like a Facebook post. But talking to a person, particularly a brother who took the same obligations we did, is best done the way you got the obligations, which was in a smaller setting. It was man to man. It was hand to hand, and as we say, mouth to ear, and so forth. So again, we've got the teachings there. We just need to remember them.